Sparking controversy is certainly nothing new for Charleston White, a man whose name has practically become synonymous with stirring the pot, provoking conversations, and crossing lines that most people wouldn't dare to approach. His brand is built on conflict. His persona thrives on confrontation, and whether people love him or hate him, they cannot ignore him. Recently, he once again found himself in the eye of a storm during a visit to Tougaloo College, a historically black college in Jackson, Mississippi, where his words, demeanor, and ultimate exit from the event sent shockwaves across the campus, community, and beyond. What was supposed to be an intellectual forum turned into a dramatic showdown that had students, faculty, and even outside observers buzzing with heated debates about race, culture, and responsibility in the black community. The event began innocently enough, or at least that was the perception. White was reportedly invited to take part in a debate in front of students, a chance to put his outspoken ideas against more structured academic perspectives. For many, it was already a questionable move to bring someone like him to an HBCU, considering his long history of inflammatory remarks, outrageous takes, and unpredictable behavior. But controversy is exactly what makes Charleston White attractive to organizers who want attention. He guarantees engagement, sparks clicks, and ensures that an otherwise routine form will be remembered. And true to form, White did not disappoint in creating chaos. In a clip that has since gone viral after being shared by the Neighborhood Talk, White is seen making negative comments about the black community while standing on stage. His delivery is raw, unfiltered, and laced with the kind of bluntness that leaves little room for subtle interpretation. He wasn't trying to sugarcoat or massage his points. He was poking directly at the deepest wounds in front of a crowd, of young students who had come expecting a debate, but instead got a collision. As the tension in the room rose, White abruptly stormed out, walking away from the podium and out the door, with a group of students trailing behind him. As he left, cameras captured his voice rising above the commotion. "Fuck racism, I don't believe in racism," he shouted defiantly, a statement that cut directly against the environment of an HBCU, a place founded as a refuge and stronghold for black intellectualism, safety, and opportunity in the face of systemic racism. His words immediately clashed with the very foundation of the institution, and the reaction was as heated as expected. Someone in the crowd shouted back, "Why would you come to an HBCU?" The question lingered like a heavy cloud, summing up the collective confusion many felt in that moment. Why, indeed, would Charleston White, a man who often rails against aspects of his own community and dismisses racism altogether, agree to appear in such a sacred space for black education and cultural pride? Later, White took to his YouTube channel to share his side of the story, as he often does when controversy finds him. In his own retelling, he insisted that he was blindsided by the setup and that his experience at Tougaloo College wasn't what he had anticipated. "When I get here, they got a whole form set up. They got the news there," he said, framing himself almost as a victim of misrepresentation. "I didn't know I'm scheduled to speak at a school, but I didn't know it was 2 schools." His words suggested confusion, almost as if he had been lured into a situation bigger than what he had originally agreed to. White further elaborated on his frustration, explaining that he found himself debating a man he identified only as Dr. Scholar. According to him, this academic figure was intertwining topics of snitching, race, class, gender, and sex into civil rights issues. The way White described it, the conversation felt twisted, as though the integrity of each subject was being muddied by the attempt to link them all together. "But when I heard a line of questioning, I was taken aback," White said. He painted a picture of himself sitting there, listening with mounting irritation as Dr. Scholar wove narratives connecting snitching to slavery, persecution, and oppression. For White, the merging of street code with historical trauma was beyond reason. It was infuriating. "So I said, 'Man, let me talk real to these kids,'" he explained. In his eyes, the academic framing was misleading, and the students deserved a blunt dose of reality as he saw it. That's when his words became sharp, provocative, and intentionally disruptive. It was less about education and more about shock, a strategy White has perfected over the years. For him, provoking outrage is a teaching tool, even if the lesson isn't always clear to those listening. Of course, this is far from the first time Charleston White has ruffled feathers. His name has become a regular headline because he seems to thrive on saying the unsayable. Earlier this month, for example, he ignited another firestorm when he took to social media claiming credit for getting rapper Boozy Badazz's son, Tootie Raw, arrested. In a video that circulated widely, White boasted with pride, saying, "I got his A arrested within 2 hours of stepping foot on Atlanta soil. I told y'all I was gonna get him." His tone carried the same mix of bravado and smug satisfaction. That defines much of his online presence. But as with many of White's claims, the truth didn't align perfectly with his version of events. According to reports, Tootie was indeed arrested, but it had nothing to do with Charleston White. His assertion that he orchestrated the arrest was another example of his tendency to insert himself into narratives for attention. For White, the facts often matter less than the perception, and by making bold claims, he ensures his name stays in the headlines. His videos rack up views, and his persona grows larger in the public imagination. Charleston White's controversial approach is part of a larger conversation about the role of provocateurs in society. Some argue that his presence forces uncomfortable discussions, that by challenging sacred cows and exposing hypocrisies, he pushes communities to face uncomfortable truths. Others, however, see him as nothing more than a disruptive opportunist, someone who capitalizes on chaos without offering real solutions. At Tougaloo College, this tension played out in real time, with students caught between wanting to hear diverse perspectives and questioning why someone like White was even given a platform in the first place. To understand why Charleston White sparks such visceral reactions, one must look deeper into his persona. He presents himself as a truth teller, someone unafraid to call out what he sees as flaws in his own community. He dismisses racism, mocks traditional narratives, and constantly challenges notions of victimhood. To his supporters, this makes him refreshingly honest, a voice willing to say the things others won't. To his critics, it makes him dangerous, a man weaponizing ignorance and disrespect for clout. His declaration, "Fuck racism, I don't believe in racism," wasn't just a random outburst. It was consistent with his worldview. He has long argued that blaming systemic racism for problems in the Black community is a distraction from personal accountability. In his eyes, the focus should be on individual choices, not structural barriers. This perspective resonates with some who are tired of narratives of oppression, but for many, especially in the setting of an HBCU, it is an erasure of real struggles that students, their families, and their ancestors have endured. That clash of ideologies is why his appearance at Tougaloo was so volatile. And then there's the performative nature of Charleston White's antics. He understands the mechanics of the internet. He knows that a clip of him shouting about racism in a room full of Black students will go viral. He knows that claiming responsibility for a rapper's son's arrest will keep his name trending. He is acutely aware of how outrage translates into views, followers, and influence. In a sense, every controversy is both a message and a marketing strategy. What unfolded at Tougaloo College is just one chapter in a much longer saga of Charleston White's rise as a cultural lightning rod. Each outburst, each confrontation, and each bold statement adds to the mythology of a man who has made himself impossible to ignore. For his fans, he is a necessary disruptor, a voice of tough love. For his detractors, he is a menace, a reckless agitator who disrespects the very community he claims to challenge.